Afternoon, everyone. I am Deanne Jones. I'm the project director for Strong Readers here in the great state of Oklahoma. Glad to have you with us here today on this sunshiny afternoon. I am going to put the link to the agenda in the chat so that you can have that. Okay, that should be there. And so that you can follow along with this. We are starting off our meeting today with a little mini professional development over writing. And so I have Tracy Ellison from our Heroes Literacy team, and she is going to lead that professional development for us. To you, Tracy.
All right, thanks, Deanne. Can you see that? Can you see my presentation?
Not yet.
Not.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Before we get started, I want to give a shameless plug for our Pages Across the Plain literacy workshops. They will be in June. We're going to start off in Shawnee with Camp Read a Lot family night. So when we're in your area, make sure that your families have had access to this, and could register to come spend an evening with us doing literacy activities, and then they'll be able to go home with a goodie bag so that they can do more activities at home as a family. And then the next day we will kick off with literacy workshops that will go right through the reading rope. We'll be there from 8 to 4. We would like you to invite all of your teachers and administrators and to come yourself. In your agenda, there are links where you can go ahead and register and send those out to your district. Today, we're going to talk about the connection between reading and writing. Again, my name is Tracy Ellison. I'm part of the Heroes Literacy Instructional Team, and our mission is to help elevate reading outcomes for every student. Our role is to help support school districts in creating sustainable systems around data to help support the needs of all students. We also aid schools in matching evidence-based literacy instruction and resources to the needs of students, and support educators and administrators through professional development and resources. Our short version of the disclaimer is that examples provided in this presentation are not a recommendation or an endorsement. Now that we've done, begin. So when we talk about writing, we know that it's very complex, but there are a few basics that we want to make sure that we give attention to. We know that proficient writers must integrate multiple skills, techniques, and strategies in order to produce a quality piece of writing instruction or writing. The writing rope was created by Joan Sedita, and she kind of modeled it off of Hollis's reading rope. You'll notice that they do look similar in a moment. There are 4 strands that are related to text generation, and 1 strand is strongly connected to transcription. It is the transcription strand, actually. But before we dig into the strands of the writing rope, we want to look at research, because we always want to tie back to what does research say. There was a study in 2024 by Kim and Associates called Learning and Individual Differences. And it says that the relationship between reading and writing has long been recognized in educational research, and that the meta-analysis quantified the connection, revealing a strong correlation coefficient of 0.72 between reading and writing skills. Stephen Graham and his colleagues also did a study, and it further substantiated this through a meta-analysis demonstrating that students with reading difficulties frequently experience writing challenges across various aspects. Their quality of their writing is going to be less. The quantity of it is inadequate. They also struggle with organizing their thoughts, using syntax properly, and they have many spelling errors. That study was in 2021, but they had already done a study in 2018 that said that the interplay between reading and writing was evident in instructional research as well as educational research. And this study showed that reading instruction enhances writing skills just as writing instruction enhances reading skills. So we don't really want to separate those. And when we say that we don't have time for writing instruction, that's really a myth, because we don't have time not to give writing instruction. So then that leads us to the strands. The transcription strand covers spelling, handwriting, and keyboarding. These are very essential for transferring thoughts into writing. We know that there are students that really struggle with transcription, and they might be our dyslexic students. They might need some technology support. So maybe some voice to text, something where they can speak into their device and it will type it for them. But most of our students just need further instruction in letter formation and keyboarding. We also don't want to forget here that punctuation and capitalization is important. So many teachers are saying our kids don't capitalize the beginning of a sentence, and they forget their punctuation. So anytime that this area is weak, students are going to struggle to get their ideas on the page. The next strand will begin our generation strands. This is where all text is generated in these next 4 strands. The writing craft strand focuses on skills and strategies that influence their writing style, the text structure, and the word choice. So we're going to start with that key component, word choice, because specific vocabulary and word placement is needed to convey meaning and impact a reader's comprehension. So not only is word choice important for writers, but a strong vocabulary is important in reading as well, because we want them to use the words from the text in their writing. Then that brings us to writer's voice. Writer's voice is the techniques used to convey emotions, the personality of the writer, and the writer's perspective. And the third point is literary devices. Literary devices are the understanding of the elements like plot, character, and setting, as well as the techniques such as imagery and figurative language. And this has to be taught explicitly because students do not understand this. It's going to take a lot of time. Teachers can help students imitate effective techniques from mentor text. So finding figurative language in mentor text or looking for ways that the writer conveys imagery is really important, in making that connection between reading and writing. Teachers can help students with instruction in analyzing the mentor text, modeling these writing techniques, and encouraging more descriptive language usage. When teachers are able to help students with the writing craft, they take their writers from a basic writer to a powerful communicator. The next strand is text structure. This is where we think of the different types of writing. So narrative, opinion, argument, and narrative. When we think of informational text, we're thinking about let's just go back to instructions. So when you're teaching students to break apart a text, you teach them to look for the headings and the subheadings. That will help them to be a better writer if they understand that informative text need those headings and subheadings as transitions between their writing topics. And then for opinion argument, you're talking about transition words and how to convey their opinion and argue for their point of view. And for narrative writing, we want to teach students how to use dialogue. So the use of quotation marks and how to show which character is talking in the passage. Teachers can do this in a variety of ways, but students need to understand that different types of writing are organized differently. One way you could do this is to use like the race method or Powtide. It really doesn't matter which you choose, but grade level teachers have got to communicate and collaborate so that we're not changing our system every year, but we've got consistency in our curriculum so that students can gain automaticity. That leads us to the syntax strand. When we talk about syntax, which I believe Classy shared with us a couple of meetings ago, it was the focus of grammar and how grammar affects sentence structure and our ability to effectively communicate. Some activities that we could do here are in the lower grades, sentence surgery. That is so fun for kids. And then a lot of times your medical facilities will donate masks or gloves, something where the kids can have an experience and remember that it's important to punctuate and use commas and quotation marks and have a little bit of fun with sentence structure. And then for older kids, sentence elaboration, you might put kids in groups where they start with a very simple sentence and then they work together to create a more elaborate, interesting sentence using imagery or larger vocabulary. And at the end, they could go back around and try to figure out which sentence was theirs, which might be a little bit difficult with all the changes that have taken place in that time. And then that brings us to the culminating strand, which is critical thinking. This strand emphasizes the development of background knowledge and executive functioning skills. When we're talking about executive functioning skills, that's not just for writing. That's talking about how we function as a student in all subject areas. So how we pay attention, how we set goals and plan, the revisions, which would come into writing mostly, and self-regulation. We'll talk about that in a minute on the next slide, but critical thinking is a great place to teach summarizing. So reading a passage and breaking that passage down into the different components. So if you have an informative passage, breaking it down by subheadings and then summarizing it. But a lot of students are going to need us to summarize it orally before we go into writing. So being able to just take your time as an instructor and let kids have the opportunity to share their thoughts and collaborate in a meaningful way, and teach students how to get the gist from their reading passages. And that brings us to this graphic organizer created by Behringer. Behringer took the information from the writing rope and put working memory in the most prominent place in the graphic to show that text generation, executive functioning, and transcription affect working memory. If students are not fluent in transcription, it overtaxes the working memory, and many of our students are going to be frustrated. And then the self-regulation becomes more difficult. And we're not even able to get to the text generation because they're stuck over here in transcription and controlling their emotions. About 10% of our students have a weak working memory. And I'm sure that you can see this in your classrooms or the classrooms in your district. But that's okay. We can help those students. We want to go back and reread the text with them, sit down, break it apart, help them to think through and brainstorm using those graphic organizers, and then move into the text generation. They're going to need us to walk through that text generation. And remember, if they are a dyslexic student, you want to get them on technology and have an assistive technology help them to write that. And remember, the most important thing is that when students say that they can't write, it's not usually a writing problem, it's a thinking problem. So what they're really meaning is, I'm having trouble thinking through this text and struggling to put it in my own words. When we train them how to put it in their own words, it takes the task off of that working memory and allows them to just relax and put their thoughts into words and then put their thoughts on the paper. But before I finish, I want to give another shameless plug for Pages Across the Plains. We'll see you in June, hopefully in a town near you. Deanne, I'm going to hand it back over to you. But first, I want to remind everyone that Classy will be back next time with morphology.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. And now I'm going to switch to sharing my screen. Okay, now can everyone see the agenda? Yes, okay, perfect. All right, so thank you, Tracy, for the PD on writing. And now we're going to move next into, this is just a reminder, I already talked to you about this last month, but we are currently getting ready to start the review for Science of Reading Professional Development. And so the deadline is fast approaching. We have 10 days left. Vendors have 10 days left to submit their submissions to us to be reviewed, to be added to our approved list of Science of Reading Professional Development. So if you have a PD that your school's really wanting to do and you're wanting to be able to use it toward your 10% requirement, make sure that your vendors know that they have 10 more days to get those submitted to us. This is the link where they can submit their I'm sorry, this top one is actually the link to our page of them. And then the bottom one is the form that they can complete to where they can be reviewed. And then we will look over those in the next couple months and hopefully have those posted by June 5th, where that your school could be looking at which ones would be approved for next school year to meet that 10% spending requirement. Next, just a little reminder for end of the year screenings. A lot of you have probably already started your end of the year screenings. These screenings are allowed to be done anytime in April or May, whenever your district sets your end of the year screening window for. So just a few more little reminders with that. All kindergarten through third grade students must take the EOI screening within your district window. And then you need to record your students that are on a slip. You need to make sure that you're recording their final score on their slip plan. During the end of the year time, it is optional, but this is be where you could get a second parent signature for the end of the year on your slip plan. But once again, that second signature is not required any longer. It is optional. So just consider that and making sure that you're getting those screenings done. Next up is our end of the year survey, which is where we're getting that data from your end of the year screening. So this is opening on the 15th, which is tomorrow. So tomorrow, if you're someone who completes these reports in single sign-on in the Strong Reader survey, your tab should be at the top for the end of the year report. So it should have not been there for a little while. At the top, you should have seen the BOI, and now you would have the tab for the EOI, where starting tomorrow, you could go ahead and enter your data for your end of the year screening assessments. This is due on May 30th, so you have the next month and a half to get this completed. I did update the guide, and this is the link to the guide that gives you step-by-step for completing this report. I did also record a new tutorial video, and so you can find the link to that tutorial video right here. It is also on the report itself. So once you go in and open the EOI, right up at the top, there's a link, and it has this video tutorial link there for you as well. As always, if you have any questions when you're completing the EOI report, you can email us, literacy@sde.ok.gov. There we go. Okay, let's move on. Next is bills to watch. So we have been watching, I've talked about on here several times, been watching a couple bills that are strong readers bills that are going through legislation. So right now we are watching Senate Bill 1778. That one originated in the Senate. We've seen many amendments to it along the way. Yesterday, it passed in the House. Since there were amendments, it's going to have some extra steps that'll have to go back and be approved, some of those amendments, but we are watching that one. House Bill 4420, which is pretty close to the same language. That one is still alive, but it is still in the Senate, has not been heard on the open Senate floor yet. It was still in a committee. So we're watching both of those. And we had talked about, we're already looking at what those are going to mean if they pass, what guidance we will need to be creating, what webinars and trainings we're going to need to have as far as any forms and things that we're going to need to create. So we're watching that. I have already set up 2 dates to do webinars, 2 July dates. So I picked 2 different days of the week and 2 different times, one's in the morning, one's in the afternoon. So we have a Wednesday, July 15th at 10 a.m. And there's the link for that already. And it's just like these monthly calls are, your password is going to be OSTE. And then we also have Monday, July 20th at 1 p.m. And there's a link for that one as well. I will also be presenting some of this at some conferences later in the summer. But we wanted to make sure that we were already going ahead and telling you what date that these will be available. These will also be recorded and will be posted on our website after the fact, so that if you were not able to attend one of these webinars, that you can watch the recording to get the information about any new changes, any new requirements, anything that's going to happen with this change of legislation. I will say there's lots of things we're looking at, and we just can't make some of those statements until we know what's going to pass, because we've seen these change a lot as they've gone through. And so we're prepared, but we can't make any promises yet until we know what everything's gonna pass, and then we will start getting to work on it as soon as we can, and always wanting to make sure that we're getting information out to our districts as soon as we possibly can, as we know that you are anxiously awaiting, so that you can make sure that you're doing everything you can for your teachers and your staff and for your students as well.
Deanna, we have a few questions.
Okay.
Is there still a requirement to post SRA data to school website?
Yes, that is still a requirement, but remember, that's your end of the year data, and you have until September to get that posted. So really what you'd be doing right now is as you're doing your end of the year data, you might be collecting some of that information, but you're not required to have that posted until September. So we have a little while to actually get that posted. Just make sure that you're collecting all of that needed data.
Okay, if there are students who were on level all year but fell below the 40th on the EOY screener, does that need to be logged somewhere on the report?
So you would not need to add them to a slip because they're not, it's the end of the year. You're not going to be starting new interventions with these students. You don't need to add them to a slip, but there is a place on that asks you how many students were below level, and it does say at any point during the year. So you would count them in that. We'll have to go, we'll review that when we're starting posting that, but you can go back and watch my video from that last year when I made the video that was giving some of that information, and I haven't watched that in a little while either. So that might be a good thing to do as you're looking at your data and you're wanting to make sure that you're collecting all the right pieces. I would say that would be good to maybe go back and watch either my video that talked about completing your Strong Readers data for your website, or that guide that we made, because that would tell you all of the pieces and make sure that you're collecting all of that data while you're in the school year without having to go back and dig for it in the fall.
Okay. Are you sharing another Excel or Google Sheets where we can document the data for the EOY survey report like last year?
As far as I know, it's going to be the same one that we had. So I haven't updated that one yet, but when legislation passes, which will be in May, I will make sure that if there's anything that's going to be needed to be added to that. When I looked at it last, I didn't think there was going to be, the only thing new that I saw that it was saying would have to be posted was pertaining to retained third graders. And that wouldn't be affecting this year because you're not under the retention for this current school year. So I don't think that anything's going to change on it for what would need to be posted in September, but we will also double check that.
Okay. Just wanting to make sure we are staying up to date on our screener choices for fiscal year 27. So we need one screener for all districts or only 3 choices?
So that's changed a few times. So if we're talking today and what is in place in law today, it is the ones that we have posted on our website. Well, we had done that RFI earlier this school year. We posted those. There's a list of, I forgot if it was 8 or 9 that you can choose from for next school year. That's what's in current law right now. However, the bills that are in legislation right now, just to speak to the question that you said, one of them did say that it would be limited to 3, but now they have amended the language in both of them to match, and both of them say that we would have 1 approved state screener. The process for that that's spelled out in those bills is that OEQA or CQA would narrow it, they would narrow it to 3. And then OSDE and the board would choose one of those, and that would be the state approved screener. So once again, that's not in law yet, but if it goes into law the way that it is still currently written in those bills, we will be going down to 1 screener, and it will be 1 screener across the state. But that's, like I said, that's not passed yet, but anticipating that passing, that would go into effect for next school year. So as soon as we know that, we will be doing what we've got to do to get information to districts, because I do understand that is a really tight timeline for districts, having to implement something new and get everyone trained before school starts. So if that is the reality for us, we will be doing our part to make sure that we're getting that information to you as soon as possible to make that doable for you and your districts.
What is the report called that is due in September?
It's the September one that we're referencing right now is not actually a report. It is a website reporting requirement. So on our Strong Readers for Schools webpage, you can find information, and it says called, the section on our website is called, under Strong Readers for Schools, it's titled Website Requirement. And it gives you the information about what website information you have to have posted on your school's website in September regarding the previous school year. So it's not really a report you're turning into us, because we're already asking you all all those questions on the reports that come to us. This is more of a public facing document that is required. And this was the first school year that had, this past school year was the first school year that we had that requirement in place. So that's the one that they're referencing. It's not a new report that comes that you're filling out to us. It's information you have to have posted on your website. And you can find that information on our Strong Readers for Schools page.
Okay, and then there's a question about funding for the single state screener and if it would be a Mira.
We can't speak to that yet. We're not even positive about the funding. We have to wait and see how if they make that a line item in the state budget. So I don't know the definite answer for that yet. And I can't speak to what it's going to be because, the way it's written in the bills that we're seeing, it would not be on OSDE to select it entirely. It would be CEQA that would narrow it to 3. And then from those 3, we would do a process to choose one. So I can't speak as to what it's going to be because it's going to have to follow the process that is written into law. So.
Okay. And last year, the SDE had a form that we had to use for the website requirements. Where do we find that?
That is the one that we've been talking about. It is on the Strong Readers for Schools page.
Okay, we're caught up.
Okay, good. So we do still have a registration link open for Amira. If you are interested in signing your school up for Amira, this link is still open and you can do that. In other news on Amira has been doing some end of the year webinars. We had one this last Wednesday. It was very good. It gave a lot of information and I thought they did a really great job of addressing some of the issues that we reported seeing in the survey. So last month, we sent out a survey on administrator newsletter, and I think I had it posted on here, and we invited schools to give us some feedback on how Amira is going in your districts. We had 180 something responses from that, and we compiled all of that data, and then we narrowed it to a list of concerns that we had and things that we saw from schools that schools were asking to be improved. And we addressed some of those concerns with Amira and some with ourselves, the things that we needed to provide some better guidance on. And in the webinar the other day, they addressed some of those things, specifically audio quality and how you can do your audio checks. They had a guidance document on there about how to address AI and student privacy with your parents if that's a concern in your district. So they gave out some of that information on that call, and we will also be getting some of that posted on our Amira page. It's not up yet, but we are working on getting some of that approved and posted on our website as well. And I think those will be very helpful. There's also a video that we're going to have linked that talks about how to go in and correct when Amira is not understanding your speech students and how to get that corrected so that Amira can better understand those and score those correctly. There's also going to be some more guidance on EL students and what Amira has to offer and support for them. So if you would like to join one of those, we also have another one coming up tomorrow. So there's one tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And then there's one on Wednesday, April 22nd as well. So if you use Amira and you didn't join the one last week, you might consider joining one of these two because I really did think they gave a lot of good information that's helpful for our district users. So check out one of those. And then the next one is going to be for administrators. And this one is about the end of the year launch pad and the steps that you need to do to close out your school year. So if you're an administrator or someone at your school who is in charge of handling the Amira administration in your district, these would be a good webinar for you to attend. And they're both on Monday, May 11th, but they're at 2 different times of day. So you've got a 10 a.m. one and a 2 p.m. one. So check those out if you are in charge of Amira data at your school and getting all of that done. Those would be good for you. Summer's coming up and we have professional development all summer long. So many opportunities for you to seek out some professional development for yourself or your colleagues or your teachers. So the first one I have linked here is our OKMTSS Summer Conference. It is June 24th through 26th, and the registration link is there. Registration is already open for that. I will be at that one presenting on Literacy Strong Districts, and if we have new legislation passed, giving some of those updates as well, but for sure presenting on Literacy Strong Districts. So you can register for that and come to that one. And then, as Tracy already mentioned, our Heroes Literacy team is going to be going to many cities across the state this summer and doing their show. And this year it's a little bit different format. They're going to have a family night the first day, and then the next day will be their literacy workshops. And so here's the registration links for Shawnee, Woodward, Guyman, Sand Springs. We don't have it open yet for McAllister, but that will be coming soon. And then as well, we have the links for the Altus one. And then I also linked the COSA Summer Leadership Conference that is May 27th through 28th for any administrators that would like to, that may be attending that. And there's the registration link for that. We have put in several proposals to present at that. We have not heard back from them yet, but we may as well be presenting at that one. And then the next one is OSSBA's Leadership Conference, and that was in August. It's going to be in Oklahoma City, and there's the registration for that. I also have put in a proposal to speak at that one. Haven't heard back from them just yet, but if it's accepted, I will be at that one and be presenting on Literacy Strong Districts, and as well as Strong Readers 2026 and what that's going to mean for all of our new changes. Many of you have had some questions in past calls about math, because now the math proficiency law is going into effect, and so what that's going to mean. So we have, I think he is on our call with us, Chance from the State Department, and he is the one who is overseeing that math department right now. And he is going to be doing a call very similar to what we do here every month. He's going to be doing a math proficiency call, and their first one is tomorrow, Wednesday, the 15th at 2 p.m. And it is, he has a registration link for that. So if you would like to register to attend the math proficiency call, that is linked there for you. Our next meeting will be May 12th at 1 p.m. and that will be our last one for this school year. And then we won't have our regular monthly meetings throughout the summer. I will be doing those webinars on any changes, but then our regular monthly calls will start back in August when the new school year starts. So let me see. We have any questions?
Quite a few. Will there be a restriction on pathways? And a follow-up to that is, will there be a restriction on pathways as well as screeners?
So once again, it hasn't passed, so this is all kind of speculation of how it is right now. But the way I'm understanding, our exemptions would stand for the exemptions we have to all strong readers aspects, which is the screener and slips. I think those exemptions will stay. But as far as pathways for promotion, it does look a little different than it did previously. Some of those alternate pathways that Oklahoma had in the previous years, I don't think those were written into the new bill. And so our pathways may be more restrictive than they were previously. So once that is all into place, we will give out more guidance on that. But it is going to look a little different than it did, 2 years ago.
Is the link to sign up for Amira for next year?
That is a good question. So you can go ahead and put them on there. I don't think they would roster your students right now since it's so close to the end of the year, but that also might be up to you. I think if there's a little place on there that you can document, and if you sign up on there, their customer services representative is going to contact you, and then you could tell them what your wishes are. Like, we're signing this for next year. Or if you do have, maybe you're wanting to have someone try it out for the next month or so, they may be able to grant that as well. So if you're interested at all, go ahead and fill that out. And then that way, one of their customer service representatives could contact you and get that started.
Will there be a grant offered for Amira funding for schools like there have been for the last 2 years?
So really, it wasn't a grant process. It was just we were using some funding at the State Department to pay for it. We are hoping to continue to pay for a screener statewide, but we don't necessarily know year to year what that funding is going to look like. So it's hard for us to speak for future years. What we were hoping is that that would actually become a line item in the state budget to where we would know that we would have that money. But I do not have that confirmation yet.
Can the 10% professional development money be carried over?
So that's a little tricky question. Strong readers funds can be carried over. So regular strong readers funds can be carried over. However, you are required to spend 10% of your funds on professional development each year. So in that sense, no, that part can't be carried over. That is really the way it's currently written, that is the only requirement of what has to be spent each year. And that is the professional development money. So if you'll remember a month or two ago when we sent out some non-compliance letters to some districts who had not met that requirement, that is because we were looking at that previous school year. And if you received, $3,000, you had to spend $300 on professional development. So really, it cannot be for the professional development, but general strong readers funds can be carried from year to year.
Okay, on their website requirement for newly enrolled students, are we comparing students enrolled on October 1, 23 or 24 with the students enrolled as of April 1, 2026?
So I'm not for sure how to interpret that exactly, but when it's asking about newly enrolled students, what it's wanting to know is how many students, like if I'm looking at my first grade and I have 100 first graders, how many of those 100 students have not been at my district for 2 continuous school years? So if I'm looking at end of the year first grade data, that means that student needed to be in my district all of kindergarten and all of first grade. If they were, and the reason we say October 1st is like they could have came to me on September 28th of their first grade year, of their kindergarten year, and they were with me all of the rest of kindergarten and all of first grade. That student's not newly enrolled because they were with me for 2 years. But if they were not at my district for 2 years, then I count them as newly enrolled. I hope that answered that. We do have more guidance around that on both the document and the video as well, because it does get a little complicated when you're looking at, if you're looking at kindergartners, well, maybe they didn't go to pre-K. If they didn't go to pre-K, they're newly enrolled. If they went to pre-K and kinder at your school, they've been with you for 2 years, they're not newly enrolled. Also, there's a word in there that's continuous. So if they were with you in pre-K and left at Christmas and then came back at the beginning of kindergarten, they're newly enrolled. You didn't have them for 2 full school years. So we look at continuous enrollment and still currently enrolled. So when you're looking at those 100 students, if they've already left you, then you're not counting them as newly enrolled because they're not in your end of the year numbers. So you're only looking at the students that were with you at the end of the year. So when I'm looking at maybe I had 20 students below level at EOI, I only want to note of my students that were tested at EOI, how many of them have not been with me for 2 full years. And that's my newly enrolled students.
With the legislators making changes, will they be implemented for 26-27 or 27-28?
The way the bill is currently written, it would go into effect for the 26-27 school year. Once again, they can change, but the way it is currently written, if it passes as I last read it, it would go into effect for this coming school year.
If you pay a stipend to attend PD off of the state list, does the stipend go towards the 10%?
Yes. If a teacher completes a professional development from our approved list, and the school gives them a stipend, that stipend can contribute to the 10%, as well as could a substitute pay. if your teachers need to go to something during the school day and you pay a substitute to take their spot, then you can use substitute pay toward that 10%. Any of those expenses that you're expecting to contribute to your 10% requirement need to be coded with program code 439. So all of that is listed on our website. If you go to Literacy Professional Development page, go to OSDE and type in Literacy Professional Development, all that is listed on our website.
And the last one, do you know anything about the HEROES program from the state?
I'll let Megan take that one.
I had a feeling. Short answer, yes, we do know a little bit about it. Tracy herself is part of the HEROES team. As far as what I think you're probably asking is, right now we're waiting for legislation to go through to confirm our continuation of the program. And Deanne has referenced the bills that are strong readers, and I will say that HEROES falls under the umbrella of the strong readers bill. We are section 508H, I believe, if anyone wants to go and read about us. And that language is in there to basically create, or we're in a pilot right now that we will sunset the pilot June 30th, and we will move into a more permanent program if the bill passes as it is. So yes, we are watching that bill as closely as I think Deanne is watching for strong readers. Hopefully more information to come very soon.
Okay, that's all the questions I see. If you have any other questions, you can email us, you can call our office. And as always, thank you for all that you do every day for young readers across our state. Thank you.